Hello, everyone. I welcome all of you to the second day of International Conference on Global Trends in English Language, Literature, and Linguistics. Our first day went very well, very hectic and productive, and you can look forward to the same today. This is the first presentation session, and today the chairpersons for this session are Professor Rida Amur, who is the Director of Literary Studies and Critical Laboratory, Faculty of Letters and Languages and University Center of Maila, Algeria. The other chairperson is Dr. Karishma Bisht. She is an assistant professor in BIT AP University, Andhra Pradesh, India. I welcome the respected chairpersons warmly to this session, and we look forward to your valuable input to each presentation. All the presenters are requested to limit their presentation to 8 minutes only, please. For question answer and comments, 2 minutes will be allocated at the end of each session. At the end of this session, any participants who want to present their presentation without registration, they can do so. And our first presenter is Ms. Meenakshi. She will be presenting her research on the topic, Mother Tongue Influence on English at Secondary Level Students. Ms. Meenakshi, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, ma'am. Yes, I can hear you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Audible to everybody, and my screen is also visible to everyone.
Yes, it is. Please go ahead.
Okay. So good morning, one and all present over here. This is Meenakshi Dabas, who is going to present a presentation on the topic Mother Tongue Influence on English Language. So very first thing which I want to share with my screen here is introduction. So mother tongue influence on English language. What mother tongue is here, I want to define mother tongue as the language which we start speaking since our childhood, which has been taught by our mother. And it's a very popular saying in India that language changes at every 10 miles. This makes us very difficult to follow a standard accent. And that's all what we call MTI, which is mother tongue influence. And when the effect of mother tongue on English becomes evident, then we say, yes, it is influencing a second language. There are some examples like school, student, pleasure, request, and there are so many words like this in pipeline. In fact, how did I get this idea to study on this topic when I heard a student saying, I want to learn very fluent English. So I just got this idea, let me research, let me study on this topic. Now, what is language? By both there is a quote, language is not everything in education, but without language, everything is nothing in education. That's so true. English acts as a second language, even though it's not our mother tongue, but it has been globally taken as a very widespread language. Now, why I have taken English as L2 as second language, as we all are aware that English is being used by a very wide variety of countries, and the world without language is unimaginable. We see in society that individuals who speak English are regarded with respect and they have more scope in their career because this is a recruitment tool nowadays. Even the students from urban areas, they do not struggle hard as compared to the students who are from rural areas. They struggle hard to learn this language, and there is more impact of MTI on this second language learning. Impact on English, like when we begin speaking in second language, we initially use sounds which we have learned from our mother tongue. Thus, everyone has mother tongue influence to begin with, either it's any language when we are learning German, Spanish, French, any language, we always has an impact of MTI on second language. For example, North Indians, they always have an accent of pronouncing sh as is. Even when they are pronouncing S, it's like J. For example, position, they speak position. South Indians also have some kind of MTI influence while they are speaking the things or a word like simple, it's symbol. Or you hear the construction, which is a word construction. What, they speak like bought. Audio, it's like audio. Yes, there are so many examples where we can recognize, yes, there is exactly some kind of influence of MTI. significance of the study is the significance of mother tongue in learning a second language has always been a subject of debate. We always had this debate whether this is influencing the second language or not. The study looks at mother tongue of students who spoke Hindi as their MTI. They are getting impacted while they are using English or while they're speaking English, writing, whatsoever they are doing. Now, factors which are affecting second languages are environment, family background, lack of resources, peer pressure, and lack of interest. These are some of the factors which I found here that these are majorly impacting the second language. Now, ideas of improvements, like we have a list of remedies. It's not like we cannot do it. It's also possible when we have certain practice to improve it. Read out loud. Whenever we get a chance to read something in English, we can read it loudly. Learn a new word. We can maintain a vocabulary notebook by learning a new word every day from anywhere. Listen to the language. It can be any podcast, any audio, songs, whatsoever you get in English, you can listen to it and practice it. Use technology. Like after pandemic, if I speak specifically, we all are very adhesive to technology. We all have smartphones where we have a lot of apps which can help us to learn this language. Practice the skills of summarizing. Even in class, when students get a chance to summarize something which they heard, which they listened to, which they have taught, they can summarize it in their own words whenever they get chance about it. That's all about my presentation. Thank you everybody for your patience to listen me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Meenakshi, for such a wonderful presentation. And you rightly pointed out that pronunciation and structure of the mother tongue plays a very crucial role on the end of the teachers while teaching it and also for the students. So
Yes.
any questions? Does anyone want to ask her questions? Okay, thank you so much. We will move on to the our next presenter.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Sharon E. is going to present on the topic, Graphic Organizers, a great way to teach and learn the English language. Can you hear me, Sharon E? All right, I think we don't have Sharon E right now. So I'll move on to the next one. Arun Daga Akade is going to present on the topic, Non-Viable Way of Rebellion of a Black Man, analysis of Richard Wright's Long Black Song. Mr. Akade, are you there?
Yes, madam.
Thank you.
Hello.
So please, the stage is yours.
Yes, madam. I'm going to share the screen, madam.
Sure, please take your time.
Richard Wright is an African-American writer who depicts in his literature the life of the blacks, how they suffer due to the social system, which is a racist system on the basis of color, black and white. Here, Long Black Song is a literary work of Richard Wright. It is a short story that depicts the life of a black man and how his life, his family suffers from the system. Generally, the life of the blacks is such that which is typical in the view of the whites. For example, in fact, they suffer from the racist system. They also, most of the blacks presume that they are degraded and they are inferior to the whites, and they cannot raise their voice against the whites when they exploit them. So the blacks are in fear. They are living in fear, thinking that someday or anytime they may be encountered with the whites, which may be accident to them. Here in this story, the Long Black Song, Silas is a protagonist, his wife Sarah and his child. This is a black family which is suffered from this racist system. Though mostly the blacks think of themselves inferior due to the social system and they are suppressed also. But here Silas is a character which is not typical character as the whites view, that the blacks are humble, they cannot raise their voice, they are subhuman, and they can do nothing as they are weak communities. But Silas is not one of them. Silas has a thought of self-esteem. He wants to live with self-esteem, and he would value his self-esteem more than his death. He does not think about himself as inferior to black community. Here he wants to live his life with his wife with respect. He does not like the whites into it in his own life, interfere his life. But here, the whole white community, most of the whites, that is who are racist whites, they interfere the life of the blacks, thinking that these are weak community and they can do nothing against us. So whenever they thought of making fun of the blacks or invade the life of the blacks, for example, in the story, the Long Black Song, a white man considers a black man's wife as his possession or assets. He think it normal that if he can molest the wife of a black man, and so he does. Further, as Silas is not a typical black man like his community, so he is a man with self-esteem. He does not dare this, and he rebels against the white man. When the white man comes to him, thinking that Silas is a typical man, he fails to understand Silas' heart, that he is conscious of his self-esteem. So the white man comes to Silas, and Silas is angry to see the white man who has molested, raped his wife. He fires at him. He kills the white man. But after this, it is resulted into more trouble. A white mob comes there, which is intended at mob lynching. The white mob calls Silas out, but Silas is not ready to come out and be lynched in the hands of the whites. Silas is a rebel in this short story. He kills the white man who raped his wife, and he also accepts the challenge, fighting with the mob. He does not surrender to the mob. He prefers to kill himself being inside the house. When the mob sets his house on fire, he prefers it, but he does not come out. He also kills many whites there. Though Silas is a rebel, he rebels. But here, I have analyzed it in a different manner. It is traditional matter that one should rebel, one should even fight with the cost of his death. But here, in my view, this is non-viable way of rebellion. One should rebel, but there must be law, or there must be other viable way that one should succeed in punishing the man who has done such a kind of crime. But here, though Silas has rebelled and killed many white men, but finally he has to be killed in the hands of the white men. So what is non-viable here? It is that he wants to live happily, peacefully with his life. He does not want to kill anybody. He knows how the whites are powerful, how they are in power politically also. He knows it well. So he wants to avoid all these matters and live his life peacefully. But he cannot avoid this clash with the whites, as he cannot give up his self-esteem. If he had given up his self-esteem, he could have survived. But Silas is not a typical person like other black human beings, as they can bear all the atrocities of the whites for the survival. So here Silas fights and gets killed himself also. Here the researcher as a view that this is not a viable way, as Silas himself feels anguish, saying that there is no escape from the clutch of the whites, from the atrocity of the whites, and even if he runs away, they can catch him, and there is no other way that he can punish the white man who has raped his wife. So there is only immediate reaction that he can fight with them, as he cannot bear it due to his self-esteem. This is considered as non-viable way. That means he does not succeed to punish the white man in a proper way. Killing is not a right way to live or to rebel. This is the opinion of the researcher here. Thank you, madam.
You are welcome. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for such a wonderful presentation on such an interesting topic of post-colonialism, and that rebellion can be in any form. Any questions for this presentation?
So
Okay.
I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
Yeah. The question is, what inspired you to take a rebelling character? Because in the history of African American literature, you'll see that usually rebelling characters are often taken as prototypes. So what inspired you? Like, because if you look at it, there is no success in the story here, but what do you think is the true inspiration for this kind of protagonist?
Actually, madam, generally most of the people are black people are ignorant, as presented in the words of Richard Wright. But Richard Wright always keeps his protagonist as a rebel. Generally, he keeps his protagonist as a rebel, and most of the people, that is, the black society is considered as degraded, and the society also thinks that they are degraded and they are low, weak before the whites. But this man might be a well-read, knowledgeable, and conscious of the fact that he too has a right to enjoy just like the white people. So he is conscious of this, and he cannot bear the intruding white men in his life. But after all, he has no proper way. This is the opinion of the researcher. He has no proper way to rebel against this unjust social system. This looks improper, and he does it as he cannot give up his self-respect, self-esteem.
Thank you.
This is like a tragic waste, I think so. Tragic waste. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank
such a
you.
wonderful expression, and thank you, Dr. Karishma Bisht, for such an interesting
Yes.
question. The tragic waste is really something that defines the whole story. So
Yes.
our next presenter is S.
Yes.
Sujarita. She is going to present on the topic English as a tool for mental colonization, a case study, a select study. Sorry, Dr. Sujarita, can you hear me?
Yes.
Please.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are. Please start.
I am not allowed to share my screen. Okay. Yes. My screen is it visible?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Good morning to one and all. The title of my paper is English as a tool for mental. Introduce again English as a tool for mental colonization, a select study. Power structure plays a dominant role in the world in order to control the subaltern group. So power has a dominant position and it can construct information or ideas, even truth about the other people. So always the powerful people will have all the positive attributes about them, and whatever is negative is attributed to the other. This is how subaltern culture or subaltern group is always presented by the powerful people. And this process or this practice was followed even in colonization. And if you take the whole world, 2/3 of the world was colonized by the British people, which many historians prefer to call it as British imperialism than colonization. And this colonization did not happen only through physical force or something like that. So for British colonization, mental colonization also played a crucial role. That's what we are going to see in this particular paper. Why physical colonization colonization was not alone possible for British, means the population of the British was very less when compared with the population of the colonized countries. So they were in a thought what to do, how to colonize the entire world. And for that, they got an option, that is colonizing the colonized people through mentally. For that, they used English language and literature in a very effective manner. How they used English language? By constructing ideologies like Thomas Macaulay, who is very well known for providing English education system in the colonized countries. He stated that I have never found one among them who could deny that a single shelf of good European library was worth the whole native literature of Indian and Arabia. So this is how he was constructing that native literatures are nothing when compared with the single shelf of English literature. And later, there is another person who was stating, that is Sir Richard Temple, who was a former governor of Bombay. He stated that English of Western education has greatly elevated the character. So through this kind of regular kind of construction, they were trying to mention English language and culture were the only civilized thing. And with this only the whole entire world could be civilized. So actually, language is not a simple tool for communication. It means much more than that. That is, a language is a kind of tool to preserve our culture, tradition, and to form a country's identity. But what happened by imposing a language and culture, the British people were in the aim to destroy the cultural practices and the language of the native people in order to make them as a slave to them. So they constructed a kind of discourse that English is a superior language. Even in now, many of the decolonized countries, English is still celebrated as a dominant language, a superior language. And how this was given to all the colonized people means through job employment in the case of India, and in the African and other Caribbean islands and all through punishments. So all the slaves, they were forced to talk in English language, and through compulsion also. When they were not allowed to talk, this is a quote from a popular person who was stating that every slave caught speaking his native language shall be severely punished, where necessary removal of the tongue was also recommended. So this is how English language was imposed upon the people, and the present paper attempts to read literary works from the decolonized countries to project the identity problem faced by the present generation. And also it implies in how a kind of position, what a kind of position English language has in the decolonized countries. I have selected 4 writers, and the first writer for the study is selected is Rita Jo, and she is a native Indian from Canada, native Canadian actually, from Canada, and she was an orphan in her young age, and that's the reason she was sent to a residential school run by Canadian government, that is the British government during that time, where all the native children, the tribal indigenous community people were forced to talk in English. So slowly they were moved away from their native cultural practices, indigenous cultural practices. This particular poem, I Lost My Talk, presents the pain undergone by the native, that is the native Canadians. So in this particular poem, she says, I lost my talk, the talk you took away. You took away the British imposition because of that English language. She lost her talk. And she was telling, you snatched it away. I speak like you, I think like you, I create like you. So now this is the condition of almost all the decolonized countries, because we lost our thinking. We don't know how to think in our natural way, because we started to imitate them. We started to mimic them. And she is telling, 2 ways I talk, both ways I say, your ways is more powerful, because you imposed that ideology in our mind that your way of talking is more powerful. But I am offering you that please listen to my talk also. Now I am giving you an opportunity. You also understand our cultural practices, our worth. So this is how she is offering a friendly hand towards the British people. So this is one way of looking at people at present in the decolonized world. And the second writer selected for the study is Merlin Norbis Phillip. She is Afro-Caribbean. Now she is a Caribbean-Canadian. So double times she has moved, and she looks at English as a father tongue. She believes that once the language is taken away from them, they don't have a kind of, thinking. She feels that she lost her thinking. She doesn't know to have her own thinking. And she says that I have lost my mother tongue. I don't know how to think. Whatever I think, it is like how the British people think. And she says, my father tongue is a foreign tongue. So all I have is a kind of anguish, because I don't have my culture, I don't have my identity. I am in a kind of confused condition. It makes me. And whenever I feel like talking, my tongue, it is stopped by a kind of wall. So she sees that all her creativity is stopped by a wall, which is the English language actually. So this is another poem that presents the pain of this imposition of language, which makes her to forget her nativity. And the third writer whom I have selected is Sujata Bhatt, diaspora writer, Indo-American. And in her particular poem titled A Different History, in this particular poem, she speaks about how the native people who can celebrate the language, who murdered their ancestors. It's a kind of puzzled question she asks at the end of the poem. And how does it happen that after torture and after soul are cropped with a long since sweeping out, how come we are celebrating the language of the enemies? So this is a question. And in another poem, question, she says that I lost my mother tongue, and whatever I speak, immediately my foreign tongue comes. So she says, my mother tongue, it rot and die in my mouth. So it projects the condition of the mother tongue's pitiable condition at present in the British imposed language world. And the fourth writer is Horace Thomas. He is a Welsh poet. And we know very well that these people from Wales, they have a kind of mindset that English was forcibly imposed upon them. Though they are white people, they still feel that English has dominated them and made them to come out of their language. So in the particular poem, the old language, the poem openly he complains. In the particular poem, he openly complains about the cruel nature of the behavior of the white people. So he asks, England, what have you done to make the speech my father used a stranger to my lips? So you have taken away the language which was ours. Your language is a kind of offense to our ears. So you answer me now. How can you do that? How can you take away our culture, our history, all those kind of richness? So the paper tries to be a comparative analysis of, tries to do a comparative analysis of writers from four categories: indigenous one, slaves, and from the diaspora community also. In all these four poems, one could find that they all experience the same kind of, powerlessness in the powerful imposition of English language. And it presents the kind of, identity crisis and rootlessness, laws of culture, all these aspects one could find from this particular poem. And the conclusion of my paper is, it's a kind of request. Still we are mentally colonized, though we people live in a decolonized countries, still our mind are colonized. So we have to avoid that colonial alienation. We have to come out of that alienation. And these writers suggest taking the side of Caliban to learn the language, because at present completely leaving English language is not at all possible. So we can use the language and we have to appropriate in our own way. So try to use it like a Caliban. So this is the kind of suggestion the writers have given. With this suggestion, let me conclude my presentation. Thank you.
You are welcome, Dr. Charitha. This was very interesting and informative presentation on the topic mental colonization using English as a tool. So any questions from anyone? Well, this was really wonderful. You said that, just like you said, that it is not just the language, but it's the culture that is taken away in this type of, by reinforcing through physical punishments and different levels of oppression in subaltern studies. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful presentation with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next we have Dr. J. Siri Padma Devi. She's going to present on the topic, Panoramic View on Indian Children's Literature. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please start.
Yes, 30. Yes, cheerful greetings to this August gathering. I'm extremely delighted to welcome you all for the panoramic view on Indian children's literature. The term children's literature, when we listen to this term, Immediately, with smile, we will be recollecting the bygone days of our childhood memories with nursery rhymes, pictorial representations, illustrations, picture books, and most importantly, stories. Yes, so children's literature, we all will agree that is a spellbinding genre of mainstream of literature. So my presentation will be focusing on how Indian children's literature is stamping its foot in the present global scenario. So the literature review enabled me to identify that Indian children's literature as a separate genre has become recent phenomenon in the global scenario. But despite the fact that it is a strapping root for the development of stories in the Western world with its rich oral tradition. So I have designed my research based on this question to fix the position of Indian children's literature in the global literary spectrum. So for that, I have designed my research by tracking its literary lineage through the lens of three periods, that is ancient, modern, and postmodern Indian children's literature. So in the ancient epoch, what happened to Indian children's literature? Actually, India, being a rich storehouse of verbally transmitted stories, it has an abundance of stories from Puranas and the great grand epics Ramayana and Mahabharata, which is still proving that it is a rich reservoir of stories. So, India proved to be a great reservoir of fables, and one best example which we could cite is the literary gem of Indian lineage, the Panchatantra, which is still ruling the minds of the children. And we have got a long list of stories like Tataka tales, which embellish the literature of India with the stories based on the previous birth of Buddha. So the ancient Indian children's literature can be termed as the cradle for the entire children's literature because it is a very predominant in art of storytelling too. Because the ancestors of India, they considered story to be the best tool to impart the values to the rising young generation. So they have practiced the art of storytelling, which is be called as Katha Kalakshepam, where people will be gathered in one place around the street corner or under the tree, and they will be narrating the stories, and they will be taking stories from all these sources, and through that they are imparting the knowledge and the worldly wisdom to the children. So we can term ancient Indian children's literature is so rich in verbally transmitted stories. Coming to modern age. So after this verbally transmitted stories, the modern era of Indian children's literature has flourished with cross-culturalism and the evolution of multilinguistic sectors. Because India, being a country of multilingualism, it enabled the genre of literature to sprout in all regional languages too. So in this era, India is dominant in devotional literature, that is Bhakti literature. So there too, they have highlighted the childhood days of Lord Krishna in Sudra and Lord Rama in Tulsidas. So by this, we came to know that the separate segment for children have been entertained throughout the age. And in this age, a phenomenal growth could be traced through translation, retelling, adaptation, and illustrations. Because translation opened up many avenues, and retellings, till now we could find many versions of famous stories, and adaptations also enabled the genre to gain prominence. And illustrations is a very notable point here because in the ancient it's only verbally transmitted stories, but in the medieval period, illustrations started to grow in India. So the predecessors are Amir Khusro and Misra. So they were the dominant pioneering figures for having these illustrations in the picture. So modern Indian children's literature can be termed as the age of Reformation age of transformation in the pictorial literature. So India slowly moving from oral tradition to pictorial representation. After this modern period, during the post-modern period, of course, as we all know, India has witnessed unseen incursions. Many political awakening happened because of many colonizers, many rulers. So, along with that, literature for children sprouted. So, in this era, the phenomenal point which we could find is till medieval literature, uh, still medieval age literature is for both young and adult, but in this age, exclusively for children started to gain prominence. One such example is from Ruskin Bond and other phenomenal writers, Sudhamurthy. So the postmodern literature of India, it belonged to, it enabled regional literature as well as in English language children's literature. It started to sprout. And one phenomenal growth in this period is the role of publishers. The publishers uh, played a very phenomenal role, such as CBT, NBT, NCRT. So they all helped Indian children's literature to gain much prominence, and it enabled India to come up or to compete with the global sector too. So the insights of my research, yes, India has undergone a sea change from antiquity to modernity. In the ancient period, it started its journey from verbally transmitted stories, then it passed through the pictorial literature, and now it has gained prominence in the digital era too. So, scope for further study, we can trace the literary lineage of child characters, and a publisher's role can be traced, and colonial impact on children's literature can be brought into limelight, and various mythological influences on children's stories can also be uh, focused on. So these are all the references which I have made for this presentation. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Siri Padma Devi. It was very interesting to see how the Indian children's literature has evolved through different literary periods, and also how the topics have changed from simple to more complex. Thank you so much. Any questions? No. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to our next presentation. That is by Mr. Arfan Ahmed Mir and Dr. Munija Khan. They are going to present on the topic Violence, Identity, and Sex Change, a comparative study of Sarah Kane's Cleansed and Peter Rowe's Snatch. Mr.
My presentation is titled Violence, Identity, and Sex Change, a comparative study of Sarah Kane's Cleansed and Peter Rowe's Snatch. It's going to be a comparative study of the two. So it's these two plays are part of In Your Face Theatre. What is In Your Face Theatre? It is a 90s British theatre which is characterized by nudity, violence, and strong language. Both these plays were first staged in 1998 and they form a part of In Your Face Theatre. This paper proposes to study the impact of violence on the body, on the male body in case of Rose, and on female body when it comes to Kane. Sex change takes place in both the plays, and this paper wants to understand how this change impacts the individual identity of the characters. The study would be comparative in nature, as already said. So, in your face is a term picked up from American sports journalism, and it was first used by theatre critic Alex Sars for 90s British theatre. He defines In Your Face Theatre as any drama that takes the audience by the scruff of the neck and shakes it until it gets a message. So In Your Face Theatre is usually criticized for its spurious violence, that the violence portrayed is meaningless. But as Sars says, there is a message to get in this form of theatre. It's a theatre of sensation. It jolts both actors and spectators out of conventional responses, touching nerves and provoking alarm. Unlike the type of theatre that allows us to sit back and contemplate what we see in detachment, the best In Your Face theatre takes us on an emotional journey, getting under the skin of the audience. In other words, it is experiential theatre, not speculative theatre. But this idea didn't come out of blue in the 90s in Britain. The idea of theater that pertains to the senses was given earlier in the century by Antonin Artaud in his book of essays titled The Theater and Its Double. Artaud's idea of theater is based on a simple premise that the masses think with their senses first and foremost, and it was preposterous to appeal only to the understanding of the audience. The kind of theater that Artaud proposes is popularly called the theater of cruelty. So violence in Cleansed and Snatch. So any detailed and faithful description of violence in fiction or drama or any other medium often runs the risk of becoming a voyeuristic spectacle, a tendency about which the anthropologist Valentine Daniel comments, accounts of violence are vulnerable to taking on a brilliant form. Violence is one of the mainstays of 90s British theatre. Sarah Kane's Cleanse starts with the death of Graham due to a drug overdose. This innocuously simple scene paves way for the subsequent action of the play. The play is set in a university that tries to rid society of its undesirables. The kind of violence portrayed in Kane's play explores theatrical possibilities to the hilt. The first instance of violence in Cleansed is reminiscent of one of the most stunning stage directions in British theatre, from Act 2, Scene 4 of Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, in which Demetrius and Chiron enter on the stage with Lavinia, who has been raped by them, and her hands have been cut off and her tongue cut out. So this violence was already present in Shakespeare. But what is the difference between this violence in Shakespeare and violence in, let's say, 90s British theatre, in, like, let's say, Kane or Anthony Nelson? Is that the violence in Shakespeare happens off stage. Kane and other 90s British playwrights bring sensational elements to the forefront. Like in this scene from Cleansed, Tinker, show me your tongue. Carl sticks out his tongue, and Tinker produces a large pair of scissors and cuts off Carl's tongue. So in the ensuing equally gruesome homophobic scenes of the play, Tinker cuts off Carl's hands and legs. So it is again reminiscent of Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, but again the violence in Shakespeare happens off stage. In this case, they put the violence at the forefront on the stage. So Peter Rose's Snatch is set in an untidy flat. The play begins with two students, Paul and Simon, boasting about a girl they have picked and raped during the night. Although the act of rape in this play happens off stage, but later in the play, Beth mutilates Paul's genitals on stage. Alex Sours, recording the response of the audience to this mutilation during its first performance, writes, when Beth mutilated her manhood, there were gasps. Some people hid their eyes. Next to me, two women squirmed. Men instinctively fused their thighs together. There were groans. So the basic aim of in your face theater is to make its audience respond to what is happening on the stage and not see everything in detachment. So identity in Cleansed and Snatch, gender, sex, and identity are closely related to one another. In Cleansed, Grace loses her identity by becoming more like her brother, who has died recently. The change is gradual. In scene 5 of the play, the disintegration of Grace's self starts, and here starts the initiation of her identity with her brother's identity. So we can see like Grace dances opposite Graham, copying his movements. Gradually, she takes on the masculinity of his movements, his facial expression. Finally, she no longer has to watch him. She mirrors him perfectly as they dance exactly in time. When she speaks, her voice is more like his. Grace wants to change both her body and her life. She already feels like Graham, and now she wants to look like him too. This desire of Grace's is fulfilled by Tinker when he removes female private parts from her and stitches male private parts instead. So this is the sex change that actually takes place in Cleansed. Once this is done to Grace, she loses her identity completely. She loses her voice and is left with no agency. Words fail to come out of her mouth as she tries to speak. Tinker tries to assuage the pain of Grace's and says, "You will get used to him. Can't call you Grace anymore. Call you Graham. I will call you Graham," because she has now become completely, she has lost her identity and she has become Graham. The disintegration of self and loss of identity in Kane is gradual, though. In Ross, the bodies of Paul and Beth get swapped in a flash. Paul, who claims to be a real lady killer, tries to rape her again. Suddenly, there's a red flash, and Beth and Paul swap bodies. Now, Beth strides around the room, showing off her muscles, and Paul covers, defenseless in a woman's body. Beth gags and ties him up. So the motive in Ross seems to be clear, to make a man taste a sample of his own cruelty and abuse. But the problem in both Kane as well as Ross is that in Rose, that the sight of violence even after sex change, continues to be female body. So that's all I have to say about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mir, for such a wonderful presentation, for the identity crisis, and for the violence and drawing references from different kinds of theaters. Any questions for Mr. Mir?
I have a question for sir. So the question is, sir, why do you think is the social significance of theater cruelty in the present scenario? How do you think it is relevant today?
When I think what is important is like why theater of cruelty. The whole idea was to make, what Shaw did in his plays. Like he made us think about certain things. But what the present scenario is like, people don't feel passionate about things. I believe, and I guess this kind of theater, what Otto proposed was like to make people feel at a certain level. I think that it becomes more relevant in the present scenario than it ever did, because we are more glued to the screens. That was one of the concerns of Otto, that the cinema and other forms of other forms of entertainment have taken over these things, from violence, for instance, from theater. So by resorting back to this violence and other forms of torture, and making people feel and in a stuff just think about it, I think it becomes more relevant when in the age of mobile phones and screens. I hope that sounds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bisht, and thank you, Mr. Arfan. Just moving on to our next presenter, who is Mary Najmeen Akhtar. She is going to present on the topic English language and its problems and challenges faced by the Bengali medium minority students of Murshidabad district, West Bengal. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Please, the stage is yours.
Give me a second. Am I visible?
Yes,
This
you
is
are.
the reference that if I come across some of the research papers, the assistant, some of the books. Thank you very much once again.
Sir Jamil Hussain, you are requested to mute your mic.
Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Najmeen Akhtar, a research scholar of Education Department from Aligarh University, India, and my topic of today's presentation is English language and its problem and challenges faced by the Bengali medium minority students of Murshidabad district, West Bengal. As you all know that English has become one of the most effective global medium of communication, and it plays a vital role of being the language of medium of instruction at different levels, the language of technology, the language of textbook. And it is very important that we cannot deny the fact that English language can enhance educational attainment and improve the overall performance and growth and development of the students. And there is a district in West Bengal called Murshidabad. Muslims are the majority people among this, among other minority community in Murshidabad. And Muslim community is lagging behind from every sector of the society. Like they are very weak financial background. They are socially, educationally lagging behind. They are lagging behind the educational attainment. And most of the schools in Murshidabad districts are Bengali medium schools, high schools and madrasas. The investigator observed that a vast majority of the Bengali medium minority student is facing a numerous problem and in English, and they are failure in English. One of the major problem of this problem is that the students are unable to understand the grasp the English language. They have the fear of English language, and poor performance in English not only undermines the job prospect of the Muslims, but also the alienates Muslims community from the other majority community, and their overall development is highly dependent on the quality of educations. There are some few review of literature which I have gone through, and from some of the literature it is found that various study conducted on various aspects. They focused on primary educations and higher educations, and they focused on other sides of the English language spoken problem and learning problem, but nobody focused on the minority community stayed in Murshidabad district. So this study is highly needed. There are some research questions. My study will try to find out the answer of these research questions. These are: what are the difficulties of Bengali medium students from the minority community in learning English? What are the level factors of poor English communication of Bengali medium students from the minority community? What are the teachers' role to motivate students to learn English learning and speaking? And what efforts should be taken to develop effective teaching, learning English among Bengali medium minority students? And there are some objectives which is included in the study, on the basis of which the whole study is conducted. The objectives are to find out the challenges those prohibit the students from learning and speaking English in the classroom, to analyze the textbook and syllabus of English of the class 10th in selected Bengali medium government schools, and to find out the English is taught in classes by English teachers, and point out the issues regarding learning and speaking of English, and to know the ability of the students learning English, and to study English teaching and learning process and tactics in the classroom, and lastly to make suggestions for improving the status of English teaching and learning, both the teachers and the taught. Methodology is very important for any research, and this research is totally qualitative, and the descriptive survey method is applied for this research. And population of my research is Bengali medium secondary students from the minority community of Murshidabad district. And for this study, 50 Bengali medium secondary minority students is taken, and 4 English school teachers is taken as sample. And random sampling technique is used for the data collections. Tools used for these data collections are textbook analysis, classroom observations, focus group discussions, and teachers interview. And finding based on the tools. Findings of the textbook analysis, I analyzed a textbook called Bliss, which is recommended by the West Bengal government in the Bengali medium high schools and madrasas. And in this book, there are 8 lessons, including 8 proses and 4 poems. And in this, while analyzing the textbook, it is found that reading and writing and also grammar is focused, but speaking skill is not focused in this textbook analysis. And classroom observation. Findings of the classroom observations are: learning process is totally the teacher-centered, and the method is used in the study is grammar translation method. Direct method is not used. And the reading and writing is more focused. The speaking skill is not focused in this in the classrooms. Only reading and writing skill get focused textbook, and it does not have any single activity on listening and reading skills. In inductive approach, they try to memorize the rules of the grammar at first and then apply it. Not only the rules and structure of grammar, but they also memorize all writing activities and writing patterns also. Basically, the whole teaching learning process is rote learning and rote memorization. Findings of the focus group discussion. The study showed that the students are majority of the students are not willing to speak in English, and they are phobia in English, and they have lack of motivations. They have limited storage of vocabulary. They are very shy, and they didn't get any motivation from the teachers and from the side of the institution. And they have less exposure in real life, so they are not willing to speak in English. And findings of the teacher's responses, it is found that there is no environment to practice the speaking English, and students have the less exposure. They have lack of vocabulary. They are shy. So there are not proper environment to practice English speaking and learning English. And it is also said from the teachers that so institution doesn't help the teachers and the class with the audiovisual aids, the other facilities, modern facilities in English classrooms. From the observation, textbook analysis, focus group discussion, and teachers interview, there are some recommendations which is very must to improve the quality of education and to improve the learning and speaking English in the classroom. These recommendations are: the English education system of Bengali medium high school needs to be reframed. The expert committee should take some steps to redesign the textbook with more skillful, effective, and qualitative lesson which could cover the skills of the language. The English teachers need to be trained enough and supported by the enough materials to use in the classroom. Trained teachers should be recruited so that they can easily get the English teaching a learning style and implement in the classroom. The more discussion and communication is needed in the classrooms. And lastly, conclusion. English is very important language for the overall growth and development of the students, whether it is in getting a good job and to excel in the future. It is very important. So government and policymakers should take a good initiative and should apply a new policy and should reframe and redesign the textbook, and more discussions and more the modern technology should be implemented in the classroom. And there are some references which is included in the presentations. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Akhtar, for your wonderful presentation. You rightly pointed out the recommendations that a needs-based analysis is required to tackle the psychological fears and lack of exposure of students, and also the lack of ADAs. Any questions for Ms. Akhtar? Okay, let's moving on to our the next presenter, who is Aditi Bhushan, who is requested to please share your screen in the meantime. Ms. Aditi Bhushan is going to present on the topic, the effect of Chaitanya philosophy of Hari Krishna Bhakti movement in inculcating moral values and self-discipline among children, a study.
Good morning, one and all. I'm Aditi Bhushan, research scholar from BRA, Bihar University, Muzaffarpur. And today I'm taking the topic to study effect of Chaitanya philosophy upon the children, how it is inculcating self-discipline and goal. Please note down my presentation ID. It is 33. So moving on, let me start. The sub-theme which I am covering is under Indian literature, the folk literature, where I'm taking folk theatre. And here I'm exclusively talking about Jatra, which has now taken a vast moment in form of Hare Krishna Bhakti movement. So let's start with the topic today. It started like, it is a kind of pilot study that we have conducted over children to see how it is working. And here we have inculcated Chaitanya philosophy that was given to them, which is now being carried worldwide in form of Hare Krishna Bhakti movement. So we have tried to impart those philosophies, and here students were taught, they were instructed to read scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Gita, Nectar of Devotion instructions, etc. Here are some of the guided principles that they have to take sattvic, they have to be very sattvic, they have to take all sattvic food, survivorship, as in seva bhakti, and how to chant mantra. So these were some of the principles that were guided by ISKCON people that we have taken in consideration here. Now, Krishna consciousness in children, because this particular aim is all about inculcating Krishna, and not only Krishna, but this scripture also entails how to live a proper life. So you can see that these are the children from our study only. So it was like, it has been carried out initially over 200 students and children, and they were from age group 3 to 15 years. We have these students. And for Hindi month, we have taken 2 months in consideration. So it was for 60 days, Kartik and Makshish. Online mode, it was carried out. And other than India, we have participating nations from Australia, USA, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Brisbane. So when we started, we have designed the activities, like we had some daily activities, self-discipline activities, and educational activities. So daily activities was something like fireless cooking, offering bhoga, prashadam. Then you can read tales, folk tales from Ramayana and Bhagavatam. You can feed cows. These were some of the activities. Educational activities were like something those with crossword, make crafts, read shlokas, narrate stories in your own words, write down essays. So these were some of them. Self-discipline tasks were like on the day of Ekadashi, you're not supposed to take rice. So these were some of the things. And bonus activities were also given to them as narrated by the Vaishnav principles, like you can plant more number of trees. So this was something happening here. And now these were the kind of worksheets that we have provided, and I'm just sharing some of the crossword worksheets and learning outcomes, like the children were coming from themselves, but how they can draw different shapes, how they can how they can buy different characters of folk tales into their particular thing. So you can see here. Now this was a performance analysis chart. This is I'm floating only for 20 days, where we were putting bonus activities also. And city, you can see that people were from Melbourne, Ajmer. They were from different states and countries. So we also were giving week-wise performance analysis so that they will keep motivated about themselves. And data analysis has proved that you can see the larger area, it was from Melbourne. So more than India, the Melbourne people from Australia were performing well. And in India, you can see that these two states, which is in larger color, coming from South India, Hyderabad and Bangalore, they were performing well. So the highest performance was from outside India. This we can show you here. So Indian states which were participated in our survey, this was this area, and Melbourne, Australia, this was the major contributing country. Point analysis, only few of the students we found that who were performing more than Excel, they were excelling, were in week 1 and week 2. They were not a great number of students in this. And also we found out that most of them were falling within the range of 1000 points only. So why it was happening, we have found out that we have started with 200, but day by day, the students the children were detaching themselves from the task. And at the end, we were left with 124. Out of them, 50 participants were doing the task. So we took some questionnaires also. We wanted to know the enthusiasm level, that what was making them not to do. So we also find that children who were not reading any kind of books or things, now they were reading it. We found that the children were from South India or from other countries whose parents were practicing already the devotional practices, or they have some form of practices already taking place at home. And also we found that UAE, where we had a very top performer of all these things, she belongs to a non-devotional family, but still she was doing it because of motivation. So somewhere intrinsic motivation were also given to them. So conclusion, we have some good points and bad points. The good points were that they have gained self-control, who have practiced it properly, and they were able to remember things because we were also making them to chant and meditate. And reading habits were inculcated, self-disciplines were inculcated. They were early to bed, and they were getting early up in the morning. And some bad effects, you can see that devotional associations was required. Time management was not proper. So many of them were not motivated. Parents were not motivated. So children were also not motivated. So these were some of the things. So because we have already learned about folk tales, we wanted to see how it is being applied to children and what results it's giving up. That's why I have taken this topic as my pilot research. So thank you. And I conclude here.
Thank you, Ms. Bhushan, for your wonderful presentation on the effects of Chaitanya philosophy of Hare Krishna Bhakti movement in inculcating moral values and self-discipline among children as study. You are very right in concluding that it is the motivation in children comes from their environment that involves a few particular habits. Any questions for Ms. Bhushan? Okay, let's move on to our next presenter, who is Mr. Jamil Hussain and Dr. Sania Niazi. They are going to present on the topic using blended learning as one of the pragmatic approaches to English teaching and learning, a case study of postgraduate studies at Aligarh Muslim University in India. Mr. Jamil and Dr. Sania. Sana, sorry.
Thank you, moderator. It's been written host disabled participant screen sharing. Respected chairpersons, esteemed delegates, I am Jamil Hussain, and the topic of presentation is using blended learning as one of the pragmatic approaches to English teaching and learning, a case study of postgraduate students at Aligarh Muslim University in India. So these are the outlines I'll be talking about. Introductory part, review of literature, methodology, data analysis, and obviously the conclusion. So coming to the word, I just wanted to tell you that first we need to imagine that there are two modes of learning. Earlier it was the traditional, and now in some of the cases it's online. So when we think about traditional mode of learning, we can understand that a teacher comes with book or a chalk, and he used something in the blackboard, or if it's overcrowded classroom, some of the students might be sleeping, some of the students might be gossiping or talking to themselves. Okay, so the students learn in the classroom, and when they go, they do so many things. Yes, there was a system, but after the pandemic, we can shift it to online teaching, and students have another advantage, and some students make it a disadvantage as well. Some students joined online and they have scrolling Facebook, they have been going to YouTube and listening various musics. Some of the students go to the playground, and they join the classroom, and they have they start playing to their own activities or the games. By the way, so my topic, the keyword is blend. So the blend here, I just wanted to convey, I just want to mean that this research paper try to merge that the online learning and the traditional learning. How can we combine? How can we merge? And how can we take the advantages from the both of the method and make it a pragmatic approach to teaching and learning? So if we talk about the word blend or the blended, particularly in the context of meaning of the linguistic, in linguistic, it says two or more words been merged into one. And there is word an example. For example, if they say branch, so branch is a blend word. In branch, it meaning that a heavy meal. And the branch is the initial word of breakfast, and the ending word of lunch. So both of the word coming together, making a new word, new shift, new idea. And it's serving the both of the purpose. It's serving the breakfast and the lunch. So it happening not in the time of the breakfast, not in the time of the lunch, but in the middle of it, and it's serving the fulfilling the whole of the purpose. So here my topic is I just wanted to main that if somebody asks what is blended learning, we can say that blended learning is a combination of multiple features that are used to help learners achieve their instructional purposes and goals more effectively than in traditional learning environment that incorporates most significant elements of online and instructor-led learning and is available in one-on-one or small group settings. The second question coming to our mind, that where and how should we avail blended learning? Yes, blended learning can be availed to all academic institutions, and more than that. Suppose an example, even in hospitals, a doctor cannot reach to a patient within so much limited time, but he for sure through a video call he can check up the person who has been living in another country, a patient who has been in a very rural or deprived area. So this is one of the advantages of it. So, and how yes, all the possible technologies we can avail this. So the most frequent strategy to blended education is incorporate face-to-face training with web-based techniques and academic resources. And face-to-face education is supplemented by segment of self-paced and web-based lessons. So coming to the next, the objective of my study, the first objective is this blended learning, try to assess and compare the effectiveness of blended learning on knowledge, skills, and competences in English learning among postgraduate students of Icgtelll Muslim University, the blended learning, and in comparison to conventional learning. The second objective, the research try to examine and contrast students' stance regarding blended learning and traditional learning. And finally, this presentation or this research will try to establish a correlation between the postgraduate students' knowledge, expertise, confidence, and attitudes in both traditional and in blended learning. So these are the few of the review of the literature that I have come across. And the first one, the Sharma and Berrat in 2007, actually and both of the author, they talks about the concept of blended learning, and they refer that in 2006 the concept of blended learning first been used, and they have used for in business world in comparing, in blending the corporate world, and then it's been implemented in higher education, and now it's in English language teaching. So the second author, Hockley, in 2018, he talks about the opportunities of the blended language learning. In this research paper, he talks very in details that a teacher can combine his classroom in print media, in audio, in video, and he can do anything. For example, suppose after the classroom, he can give an assignment, and he can keep a record. Maybe the students are in the group and they have in their respective homes, but in the evening they schedule a meeting and they can have their performance, their progress, and if they need it, they can personally reach up to one-to-one and give their feedback. If needed, he can refer a video. If needed, he refer a research article. If needed, he can give his own perspective. So these are a few more. So as because of the shortage of the time, I'm moving next. So these are the methodology. The participants are the postgraduate student of Icgtelll Muslim University tool. I have used a questionnaire which is based in Google form, and I have shared, circulated among 200 plus students, and I have received on 100 students, and based on 100 students feedback or response in this questionnaire, I have analyzed it in the Microsoft Office. Coming to the results, among the 100 students, I found that 76% of the students were male and 24% of the students were female. So this result shows majority of the postgraduate students opined that the traditional mode of learning is still much better and can have better conceptual clarity and understanding, although it is time consuming and some additional cost attached with it. Whereas online learning depicts that students comparatively prefer less than traditional mode of learning. And the postgraduate students find online learning is flexible, saves money, time, and energy. But the actual growth hardly is sufficiently visible in online learning. While the postgraduate students are of the opinion a choiceable one, as they can avail the advantages and positives from either of the sides. More importantly, if they cannot take any risk in uncertain calamities like pandemics and such situations, at least their study can continue without any hamper or uninterrupted situations. This is a graph, and the graph shows that then 34% of the students are still agreed on traditional or conventional learning. On the other hand, online learning, 26% of the students have opined that yes, online learning is better. But if we look upon in both of the graphs, that in the middle, still a good number of the students, 31% of the students have consented that yes, online learning will be one of the good area that we can have the much advantage and much growth and understanding and knowledge upon it. And obviously 9% of the students have consented none of these skills or method or approach. So coming to the conclusion, yes, this proves that the students are interested in blended learning. The results of the study illustrate the students' satisfactions with blended learning as it enhances their English language skills and helps them to make English learning collaborative, interactive, and interesting. So the study indicates that blended learning will be a more significant growth era than barely restricted to online or traditional. Although there are a few drawbacks about the method, including the slow internet or the internet connectivity or the while connecting the facilities, it might take times, or they might face difficulties, but once a students or a teacher come across the system, I'm sure he might not be able to face all the time. So the students' view regarding the blended learning are helping them to understand their subject material in English courses through watching online videos from native speaker, using both personal devices such as cell phone, MP3 video, and social networking systems. So I concluded, yes, blended learning there facilitates, provides. There are so many attractive programs in the computer. The students can motivate and learn much better, and they can understand the conceptual clarity. They can go through the in-depth of their concept, their topic, their understanding, and even the blended learning give a chance to the shy student to participate and share their opinion. These are a few references that I've come across, some of the books, journals, and articles. I hope I have made some senses upon blended learning. Thank you very much for your patience listening. Thank you once again. If you have any questions and queries, I'm ready to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Jamil Hussain. You have effectively convinced us for using blended learning as one of the pragmatic approaches to English teaching and learning. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Dr. Rashmi Jain. She is going to present on the topic Disability Studies and Indian English Literature. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you. Just let me. The topic of my presentation is Disability Studies and Indian English Literature. Disability studies began to emerge in the West in late 20th century as a result of success of the disability rights movement through the works of scholars like Irving Goffman, Michel Foucault, and they have made it an identity-based approach. Leader like Ed Roberts called that disabled people are one of the largest minority group in the nation, emphasizing their new feeling of the shared identity. In 1998, Simi Linton, in claiming disability, summed up that the disability study allow disabled people to find group identity despite many differences amongst them. It has also emphasized that how disabled people are connected not only through personal symptoms, but through social and political circumstances which have made them a group. It has also helped to achieve important legislative victories that has changed for better access, inclusion, protections from any kind of discrimination. And Indian English literature was influenced by this movement in the West. There are so many works in Indian English literature that present the problems of the disabled peoples, their traumas, their life journey, which proved to be highly inspirational. So some of the objectives of my paper includes to showcase the traumatic plight of the disabled people with physical, mental, or any such deformity, and the attitude of society towards them, to exhibit that disabled people deserve equality, proper treatment, and respect in the society, to bring the disability from the margin into the center of the story, and finally, to cure, rehabilitate, or eliminate the deviance in some way, restoring a sense of order. Last but not the least, to express their individual existence and collective importance. So I have taken three works from Indian English literature. One is Tara by Mahesh Dattani, another is Broken Images by Girish Karnad, and third is The Animal by Indra Saha. So in Tara by Mahesh Dattani is a work by Mahesh Dattani in which Dattani presents the plight of the Siamese twins who were conjoined from the chest, pelvic area, and had got 3 legs. So when they were babies, they were separated through an operation. As they were having 3 legs, the supply of the blood to the 3rd leg was more through the girl child. But because of the gender prejudices and the stereotypes, the leg was given to the boy child, that is Chandan. And as the probable result, the leg never suited him and it has to be amputated, making both the children handicapped. So the play not only focuses on gender prejudices, stereotypes, but highlights the disabled condition of the children. The parents of these children were apprehensive about the future of the disabled children, specifically about the daughter, who has to suffer double because firstly, she's a female and then On the top of that, she is disabled. Even Tara mother has quoted, to quote, "It's all right when she's young. It's all cute and comfortable when she makes witty remarks, but let her grow up. Yes, Chandan, the world would tolerate you. It would accept you, but not her. The pain she is going to feel when she sees herself at 18 or 20. 30 is unthinkable. And what about 40 and 50? Oh my God." So later in the play, we find that under some circumstances, Tara dies, and later on, Chandan becomes a writer and he makes the story of Tara as his own story, making and doing an injustice to her. Broken Images by Girish Karnad is another play which exhibits the trauma and the plight of the disabled people. Manjula Nayak, this is the story of two sisters, Manjula Nayak and Malini Nayak. And Manjula's sister Malini, she was suffering from a neuro disease which led to the paralysis of the lower portion of the body, making her disabled and dependent on others since her childhood. We find that Malini became the apple of her parents' eyes, and Manjula was sent to her grandparents' home, because of which Manjula started feeling aloof. She started feeling isolated, and a jealousy was created in her. This we can also find that this isolation later developed an apathetic attitude towards her sister. She felt that Malini has snatched away everything from her. The play opens with the fact that Manjula has become a famous English novelist because of a new book, and she has been called for an interview where she faces her alter ego in form of a doppelganger on a plasma screen. Then the doppelganger asked her that how was she able to produce such a voluminous and exceptional work of literature in such short span of time after Malini's death, asserting that Malini was intelligent, she was beautiful, she had an exceptional command over English language, and Manjula was just a mediocre regional writer. Manjula finally accepted that she never wrote the novel and it was Malini's work, and she got it published on her name since both uses the initials M. Nayak. To quote, the image says 10,000 words a day. It wasn't inspiration. It was a cataract of words, a deluge not matched since Noah's Ark. Manjula explodes. All right, I didn't write the novel. She did. She wrote it. Every word of it. Image, dear me. Unquote. So we find that when Manjula was instigated, she spoke the truth to the doppelganger, and she admitted in the end that I hated the cripple. I had always hated her. I was only wanting her to die. She says that Malini has taken away everything from her, all the happiness from her, and now it was her chance. She even accepts that although it was a mistake, it provided her with a chance to survive. Malini was dead, but she was alive. So we can see the kind of hatred Manjula has developed towards Malini in particular, and I feel that this apathetic kind of attitude has been developed in the society towards the disabled. There's another work, Animal People by Indra Sinha. So in this particular work is based on the Bhopal gas tragedy. So Animal People portrays the repercussions of a chemical disaster in Bhopal, infectious town named Khofpur. And Animals People is a perfect example of disability studies in literature. Animal was born normal, but the poisonous gases reacted in such a manner that he had got a twisted back. These gases led to certain chemical changes in his body that his back was twisted and he was not able to walk in an upright manner. That reduced him to the status of animal literally. Rejected by the society, he is forced to live in the streets of Khofpur by scavenging like the street dogs. The trauma suffered by animal has been presented in this particular novel. Some of the outcomes of my paper includes that disability studies have opened a new horizon for discussion and analysis regarding another marginalized community and to bring them back to the mainstream. It has made people realize that disabled are not handicapped, but they are differently abled who needs our support and not our pity. They have their own cycle of progress and deserve every right and respect in the society and from the society. It has made people aware regarding their struggles, hardships, and trauma which they go through. And this is what makes their journey inspirational for others and to learn something from them. These are the list of references which I have quoted in my presentation. That is all for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rashmi, for making us conscious about the problems and all the struggles that disabled people go through, and that is portrayed in the literature. Any questions for Dr. Rashmi on the topic disability studies and Indian English literature? All right, thank you so much, Dr. Rashmi, for your wonderful presentation. Moving on to our next presenters, Mr. A.K. Gopi Krishna and Mr. P. Kausar Basha are going to present on the topic Visual Teaching and Learning Perspectives in Engineering Education, a Study.
Perspectives in engineering education, a study actually. This is my presentation. And regarding to this, we have many other concepts like abstract and paper presentation and some other concepts also working here. So main concept of this virtual teaching, we have some perspectives which are important for engineering students that we have noticed here. So regarding to this, teaching and learning through virtual method in higher education is a new concept after COVID-19 situation. However, many virtual teaching and learning methods are implemented in education field to resolve the distance modes and virtual education fields may be increased. However, the perspectives of virtual teaching and learning are enhancing the engineering education, whatever may be. The pedagogical approaches are doubtlessly we have the close and ready to present the perspectives of the COVID-19 after COVID-19 and during the COVID-19 also. The virtual method initiated new perspectives barriers. Hello.
Mr.
Virtual method in higher education, we have different issues like that. After that, we have the coded a few things which are necessary to increase virtual teaching and learning. Based on introduction, we given that the perspectives of teaching and learning approaches are increasingly common in present virtual world. The current strategies of the virtual method of teaching and learning are breaking the traditional barriers of teaching and learning to enhance the performance of students. After that, we have few concepts need to be implemented, which are basically important for the virtual education. Based on these concepts, we have focused on these particular research questions like that. Which virtual perspectives may enhance the teaching and learning in engineering? What is the utilization period of the virtual teaching and learning in engineering education? Later on, can virtual teaching and learning may suitable for the practical sections in very important in engineering education? So these three questions we need to be focused on in this particular concept. After that, based on these questions, the virtual teaching learning methods are the most suitable for engineering education that may be proved in so many times because the literature review of the paper and some other research interest have been focused on that, and we came to that the pedagogy need to be approved and the pedagogy must be improved to reach the engineering education to overcome the traditional teaching environment. It's not mean that traditional teaching is not bad, but the traditional teaching after COVID, it has been become a problem. So whereas it is engineering education, for engineering students, it is more flexible to go for the virtual education. And has been focused in that. And what is the perspectives of the teaching learning concept is nothing but virtual concept required a simple and effective, accessible methods we need to be used. Compelling curriculum is also be focused. Social friendly things must be involved in virtual teaching. Real classroom and virtual reality must be involved. And innovative technique methods should be adopted by teacher and students also. For this, we need a lot of things are important to be work on virtual education. Right, coming based on these concepts, we came to conclusion that virtual perspectives of teaching and learning help both teachers and that is or to overcome the difficulties in the virtual sections. After that, some of more conceptual things are understand here in that concept that maybe student and teacher need to be motivated and accept the present perspectives during virtual learning in at the same time the successful for the successful experiment of the learning and the teaching. So this is my conclusion, madam. And here are the references
Thank you,
we have
Dr.
both.
Krishna.
Yeah, and here we are very thankful to you that you are carefully means patiently or listen everything. So thank you, madam.
Thank you so much for presenting a wonderful or making an argument on the topic of virtual teaching and learning perspectives and engineering education. Any questions for Mr. Krishna?
Yes, Gopi Krishnan, do you have any language lab system in your engineering education?
Sir, please.
I think you are from Rajiv Gandhi Memorial
Yeah,
College.
Rajiv Gandhi Memorial College of Engineering and Technology that is located in India and Andhra Pradesh. Sir.
Are you as a professor there?
Yeah, I'm working as assistant professor, sir.
So is there any language lab systems in engineering?
Language
lab.
Yes, sir. We have language lab, ELCS lab, and we have Dell lab also, Digital English Language Lab. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna. Our next presenters are Dr. V.L. Satya and V. Jaya Lakshmi. They are going to present on the topic, the survival of the fittest. The next presenters, Dr. V.L. Satya and Mani Bharati VP are requested to get their presentations ready. Yes, Dr. V.L. Satya and V. Jaya Lakshmi. Are you there? The presenters of the topic, the survival of the fittest.
Yes, ma'am. A very pleasant good afternoon to everybody. I'm Jayalakshmi, research scholar from Sri Shakti Kailash Women's College, Tamil Nadu. My presentation is about a novel, Hunger Games, and one particular theme, the survival of the fittest. Firstly, I would like to give a gist about the author and the novel. Hunger Games is a trilogy work written by Susan Collins, an American writer. Her well-known works are Hunger Games, Underland Colonies, and she started her career in 1991 as a television writer. Hunger Games was released in Scottish Plus in September 2008, and she also got numerous awards like Scribble Award for Fantasy Science Fiction in 2008, Nabia Children's Novel Award in 2004, California Young Reader Medal in 2011. Now entering into the topic, the theme, the survival to the fittest. In this topic, we are going to see about the issues faced by the people of Padam, like to serve poverty, oppression, and the effects of the war among them. It deals with the struggles of self-prevention that the people of Padam face their districts and struggles during the Hunger Games. The games began with the courage and as people fight for the food where throughout the arena kill nearly half of the something like tribes. Survival or the act of surviving is nothing but continuing existing particularly when this is done despite conditions that might kill or destroy it. The concept can be applied to the humans and other living things of the Padam in 13 districts originally made up with Padam. The readers learned that the districts had started a civil war which was known as Dark Days. Katniss displays the theme of survival because she is refusable, has integrity and the prevalence. While the other tribes in the game provided food to them at the start of the game and Katniss by hunting and fighting in our own food in the witness. While other tribes, throughout the hunting and defeating her life against their attacks, she proves that she is a survivor. She uses her hunting skill to take down other tribes, like she would hunt like animals and around the districts 12. Now, I'm going to conclude my topic that the message of resistance and the remains an app for the world today as activists, the element of the catness rebelling in their own protest. Thank you so much, fam, for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Satya, for taking us on a wonderful and interesting tour of the Hunger Games. Any questions for Miss Dr. Satya? All right, let's moving on to our next presentation, which is also by Dr. V.L. Satya and Mani Bharati VP. Dr.
Ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to my presentation. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to one and all gathered here. I am Pooja from Vivo Chidambaram College, Tamil Nadu. So my topic is delineation of ecological destabilization in dystopian fiction. I've chosen this topic because green literature is the current orb of the world. These are my contents I'll be dealing about. It speaks about the ecological crisis in dystopian society, the portrayal of ecosystem in the dystopian fiction, and the warning it gives the readers. So let me first explain what is ecosystem. It is actually the foundation of life. So all living and non-living things are combined together. They are interconnected in this world to create an ecosystem. All the organisms have their own vital role to play in the welfare of this environment. Next, I'm coming to the topic utopia. It's an ideal place where people live in harmony with the nature. It has no diseases and it has a prosperous ecosystem which is well maintained. Dystopia is just quite the opposite of utopia with dehumanized environment, and the natural world is banished. It's full of oppression. Ecosystem in dystopian society. These are the characteristics of the ecosystem that is witnessed by the readers in dystopian society. The first one is scarce natural resources and the damaged agricultural system, horrible climate changes, and contaminated environment, which makes it really difficult for the organisms to survive in such conditions. It has a collapsed ecosphere. The portrayal of destabilized ecosystem in dystopian fiction. So the main characteristics of dystopia itself is a deployed ecosystem. Nature is life, and a damage done to nature will lead to the destruction of the other species. So what all we can expect in a dystopian world is that it has a cataclysmic event. It has many cataclysmic events. So I have chosen 6 different works from fiction, which belongs to various genres. The first one will be Wall-E. It is an animated movie. It was released in the year 2008. This movie speaks about the overrun, the end of the world due to overrun occurs in this film due to garbage. So we can see in the see it with the guy in the right, the robot. He is very sad about his conditions of cleaning all the garbage by himself. Then the next film I would like to speak about is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. It was released in the year 1984. It is an animated Japanese film. It speaks about the post condition of nuclear war, which led to the contaminated environment and mutated giant insects. And then the one of the best novels of Margaret Atwood, Orange and Craig. It's a post-apocalyptic novel which speaks about the dangers of genetic engineering leading to the aggressive hybrid animals and the struggle for humans to survive in such conditions. The next one will be New York 2140. It is a novel by Kim Stanley Robinson. It was published in the year 2017. It is a post-apocalyptic climate fiction. The novel speaks about the dangers of global warming. And then Breathe. The novel was written by Sarah Grosen and published in the year 2012. This novel speaks about the pathetic condition of the future generation. They are fighting for oxygen and tree pods. The essence of this novel is the dangers of deforestation. The final one will be I Have No Milk and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. It's a short story. It was published in the year 1967. So this speaks about the dangers of artificial intelligence in the near future, which leads to the destruction of human race and nature. So why did I chose this topic and these six fictions is because it deals with the destruction of environment in 6 different aspects, right from Wall-E. Let me explain. According to a survey in 2021, in that particular year alone, the garbage dump was 2.12 billion tons in this world. So if we filled all those in trucks and lined them up, it will round the earth for 24 times. It is that big. Same is the case with the rest of the works. All of them are written based on scientifically proven ends. This various causes has a high possibility in destroying environment. So why did it took only the portrayal of destabilized ecosystem is because dystopian novel by itself needs some negative tone. So it will be achieved only by portraying the nature in bad condition. But there is a danger that dystopia can become a reality because our current society, with further process in the same state, can either become utopic or dystopic. Dystopian fiction is a caution to human species about the nightmarish possible future. The theories I have dealt with in this thesis is eco-criticism and dystopia. The destabilized environment is used as a setting in dystopian fiction is because it can induce anagnosis in the readers and create awareness among people. Dystopian fiction is the best approach to create awareness about nature to people. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja Rajasari. Your presentation on the hot topics of dystopia and ecosystems are very relevant to this conference. Our next presenter is Sharabani Dash. Are you available here? Yes, please start.
Good afternoon, Namaskar. This is Shravani Das from Odisha, India. I'm a teacher of English at Odisha Adarsh Vidyalaya. My topic is white trains and contemporary literature. So, literature is a productive skill of art which reflects the real state of society, culture, values, and beliefs. It is a means of communication which communicates throughout the world through characters, stories, essays, poetry, fiction, diaries, informative journals, and some other documentations and records as well. Simultaneously, we can find that literature can inspire the society to glorify with some new ideas, and it always gives us some new and better information about other parts of the world which we may never be able to visit. It embodies and future generation. It is the introduction part. And we find that literature, it is a productive skill of art, and earlier people used to go to library and spend hours in searching and reading. So my topic, come to the topic, like what are my objectives are to explore the current trends of literature and how its approaches have given a new shape to English literature. As we know, my study is to throw light on the current wide trends of literature and how its approaches have given a new shape to English literature. We know at present, after post-pandemic COVID-19, current trends in literature are widespread through accessing internet, which has become the most magical platform to connect the literature globally. People will still read literature, but not as they used to do by means of traditional methods like books, journals, or newspapers. Earlier, people used to go library, as I have shown you before, that, but they spend hours in searching, and the time has changed. Their taste has been also changed. Now, in the age of cybernetics, in the age of internet, people are able to know any information of the entire universe at the click of a mouse. And with the commencement of every new era of literature, style change, giving rise to a new trend, many traditional literatures are now accessible through online platforms. And my findings are here with you. Like in the age of cybernetics, we can find current wide trends in literature. There's an internet, e-books, e-library, audiobooks, mobile apps, social media, blogging, twittering, microblogging, and hypertext. And there are different approaches to literature, like creative nonfiction, like we can find journal articles through online mode, research paper, memoir, etc. And digifiction, which is a triple middle literature, like book, video, and audio. Digifiction, this is called a triple middle literature. We are getting benefit of this due to the wide range of internet accessing. Take stock novels, as we are chatting with our new friends, and we are making new blogs, and we are sending some new information through email. And we have so 6-word flash fiction by, for example, like Ernest Hemingway, For Sale, Baby Socks Never Own. And we have virtual conference. It's a privilege to like virtual conference we are enjoying now. And hyper poetry, this is digital poetry. We are nowadays we are able to access and we are able to read all the poetry through internet and digital platform. And last one is mobile textula, poems on mobile phones. Like globalization and technological advancement have created a change in the methods through which literature is conveyed and perceived. The way literature is studied by modern day, people have transformed predominantly into digital platforms which can be accessed anywhere from a digital device. It is a quick, convenient, inexpensive, and generally accessible. It always allows easy access to vital information and exchanging ideas, allowing literature to be analyzed. And here are my conclusion part. The result of the study suggests the wide range of digital platforms have encouraged the writers to explore the literary interest in a very different way, through internet, through emails, through bloggings, through ebooks, through audiobooks, e-library. These are the very magical platform which help us to access all the intellectual scenario a very easy way. And digital media also proves to be important in improving the access and academic analysis of English literature. Web-based learning, now it is a very beautiful trend. Web-based learning has facilitated the growth of English literature scholars. Thank you. This is all about my topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sharabani Das. You have literally terrorized our whole conference in your paper and rightly pointed out that the access has improved and also the DG and flash fiction are the new in. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Kiran Zahra. And after her, is there anyone who want to present? All right, we have Kiran Zahra as our last presenter.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay, Ms. Mani Bharti after this.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'm very happy to be here today among all of you. And today I'm going to talk about the way contemporary fairy tales are reconstructing the figure of the princess and empowering women by presenting them as an unconventional figure, which leads to the subversion of patriarchal ideology, thus supporting women in women empowerment and feminism. So in this regard, I'm going to compare two movies which are well known to you and to all of us. First one is Cinderella and the next one is Brave. So not long ago, all of us have been enamored by Cinderella, her flawless beauty, her undebatable manners, and her expertise in household chores, her patience and live nature, and docile persona. So all of these traits defined a good woman in a patriarchal setup. So every other woman who did not possess these values, for example, if she was not beautiful according to the criteria of patriarchal society, if she didn't exhibit moral values that were referred to as traits of a good woman, she was categorized as a bad woman. The good news is that Disney is shifting its narrative now, and this shifting of narrative is clearly visible in the movie Brave. So here we have the leading character Miranda, who offers the characteristics which make her the polar opposite of Cinderella. Instead of staying at home and hoping for a Prince Charming to rescue her from her difficult lifestyle, she is in herself self-dependent. And instead of sitting at home and stitching fanciful dresses for herself in order to participate in a dancing party, she likes to explore. She likes to explore the unexplored world on her own. In her with her free spirit, she prefers riding a horse, shooting arrows, and she rides a horse instead of being taken into a carriage. And instead of needles to stitch a fancy dress, she explores far off mountains on her own instead of looking for someone to take her to dance party. And similarly, she does not need a Prince Charming to rescue her from her difficult situation. Instead, she herself becomes a rescuer for her mother when she needs her help. So we see that though gender equality is still a far-fetched goal in most part of the world, still through the subversion of the patriarchal values by media, all these practices have the potential to accelerate the slow progress towards the goal that lies at the heart of SDGs. Thank you. It's all from me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kiran Zahra. Your presentation on defining that the change in the portrayal of gender roles in contemporary fairy tales is very important. This is actually the new trend that we have seen in another presentation as well. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Ms. Mani Bharti.
You about the novel. Throughout the novel, Brian learns how the survive is a vast wilderness with only his novel hatchet. Brian has already survived 54 days alone in woods after a plane crash when this novel begins. And he finds a gun, 2 lighters, fishing gears, and other survival items in the plane on which he has crashed. He uses the gun exclusively for a time, but when the firing pin breaks, Brian finds himself once more reliant on bow and arrow. He survives by eating and rabbit and fool birds, but eventually realizes that winter is coming and he must think bigger. By the time of winter, Brian has to learn to survive a lot. Now I'm concluding my presentation. I'm going to say about few points about survival. People will go to great length and do things that they wouldn't normally do in order to survive. We have seen this countless times in the wilderness and places of war and famine. The important thing to remember is to never give up the hope, because even you can make it out of this situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mani Bharti, for your presentation on making choices in survival. We wish you best of luck. And the link to the feedback form is provided in the file that will be given in the chat. And after at 1:30 p.m. Indian time, there will be the keynote session, and you can join it then. This is all from this side. Signing off, this is Mashal Shahid, faculty from International Islamic University, Islamabad. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a wonderful day. See you in the next session.